Well, it's that time again, friends. It is time for us to gather all around the hot microphones. It's a little hotter this week than normal. Fireside Chat Radio is on, presented by the Jerry Cox Company, so we'll start over there from the Jerry Cox Studios in downtown Conway in a hidden location. So how you doing, Marshall Bill?
I'm good. I am here and got my seat warmed up. The Deke was warming it up before I got in.
Yeah,
so,
that's right.
You know, so
yeah,
I'm
Deacon
good
used
go.
to have a real good, comfortable chair in here.
Yeah, and Larry's up in the mountains, so we'll miss him this week.
Right.
But
and then he goes and gets a chair. I was like, going, Deacon, we got chairs. And I brought like one of the old funeral home chairs, that they put out by the grave sites for him to sit on. But he wised up. He went and got him a comfortable chair with a good back on it.
Sure did,
funny.
buddy. Mm-hmm.
How you doing, Deacon?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing
like I haven't seen you in a while, but then again, I've seen you all day today.
That's exactly right.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Good to see you. Well, let's welcome our guest. He is Dr. John Stamey. He spent a wee bit of time over at Coastal Carolina University. I've known him close to maybe 30 years or have known of him, something like that, isn't it?
we've known each other for just about 30 years.
Yeah, long time. And we have got to work on different projects throughout the years, and I found out he's got some crazy things going on in his life. He's got some paranormal experiences, and what we do here on Fireside Chat is we talk about the history of the Grand Strand and Horry County, and really the Carolinas at large. And we were contemplating the other day, who would we have on that would be a good guest? And I was like going, ghost stories. Yeah, and so Alice Flagg came up, and so it was obvious that we would talk to you. So welcome to Fireside Chat Radio.
Well, thank you very much. It's good to be here. I can say safely that it's an honor to get to talk about Alice Flagg because she is, I believe, the most romantic ghost in America.
Mm-hmm.
She's got a great story. I'm going to talk about the story, and then I'm going to talk about some of my experiences. I've experienced a little bit of stuff with Alice, and then maybe a few things in and around that paranormal world, if that would be interesting to everybody. So, you want me to get started?
Well, I want to know who Alice Flagg is. I mean, for someone new to the area, that's an obvious question. Who was Alice Flagg?
Okay, Alice Flagg was a member of the Flagg family. They were one of the richest families in the United States in the 1820s, 30s, and 40s because they were rice planters.
Right.
Her brother was Allard Flagg, and I believe he was a doctor. Mm-hmm. Back then, you didn't go to Harvard Medical School. You just became a doctor, and you started trying to help people. So she was a member of that family. She was a very sweet girl, from what I understand. By the way, something you may not know. Do you know Jay Bolts?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Jay and I were out at Old Gun Church. Do you know that there are 8 gravestones for Alice Flagg?
Really?
Because back in the day, they used to keep naming the daughters the names of the elders. So
okay.
There are a bunch of Alice Flaggs, and Jay showed me that. I thought it was very interesting. But anyway, the one in question was born about 1829 or so. And what happened was, being the daughter of a very wealthy plantation owner, she had a lot of benefits. She got to go to nice boarding schools and everything. But as things happen, Alice met a lumberjack.
Uh-oh.
She met a lumberjack. That's right. She's marrying down. And in fact, I learned a lot of this. I've got a book right here. It's called Alice Flagg, The Ghost of the Hermitage, and this is by my friend Nancy Ryan. I got to know Nancy before she passed away. Mm-hmm. She was a monster when it came to historical fiction. She was a great researcher, and I learned. She said, I really worked hard to try to make that book as period as I could. I went to Charleston. I went to that old girls' boarding school. She did a great job. And she characterized Alice as just a lovely young girl who fell in love with a lumberjack. And what happened was Allard saw a string around her neck with a little tiny ring on it. And apparently that was the engagement ring. He became furious. He ripped that off of her neck. He threw the ring into the swamp, told her to go to her room. And the next day, he sent her by carriage to a girls' boarding school in Charleston. Now, they say that she died of yellow fever or a bunch of things, but she basically pined away because she was in love with this boy and she didn't get to be with him. And that can make it look like you're sick from a variety of diseases. And there were a lot of diseases back then, let's face it. This was before the Civil War, and I mean, times were difficult. So anyway, Alice was a true victim of circumstance and a brother that didn't want anything to do with her marrying down, regardless of how much she loved the man. So anyway, today there's a monument to Alice Flagg in the cemetery of All Saints Church. Now, in this room, do we all know where All Saints Church is? It's in It's in Pawleys Island. Mm-hmm. It's about a 4-foot long by 3 feet wide memorial. It just says Alice. And I've never really spoken with them at the office of All Saints Church, but by and large, everyone believes that is a monument to Alice Flagg. Now, where is Alice Flagg buried? A lot of people think that a few people that really are in the know think she's buried at Blaine United Methodist Church in Murrells Inlet. And
okay.
in a small grave. But anyway, a lot of people go out to see the grave of Alice. I've been out there. I've taken people out there. In fact, I can go out to that graveyard at night and I don't need a light.
Right,
I've been there so much. You go straight back and then you make a right and there's a light that comes on occasionally. And people bring flowers. They bring rings. They bring little tokens of appreciation to Alice. They put them on the grave. Now, I mean on the marker. We better call it a marker. It's not a grave.
It's a flat marker, yeah.
It's a flat marker, that's right. And the legend is if a young lady walks backwards 13 times around the grave, they will see Alice. I believe what they will see is that they are dizzy.
Yeah.
I love it.
Well, I mean that's what I think. But anyway, it's a wonderful thing. She is truly the Grand Strand's most popular ghost. And it's a wonderful love story, and it's a shame that she didn't get to be with her man. Who knows, she might be with him in the afterlife. She really might. But anyway, that's enough about Alice and the core history. Now, I've had some interesting things happen. In 2003, I brought a buddy of mine who's a photographer down here. His name's Joe Hawk. And I said, Joe, let's go down there and take some pictures of the grave or the marker and do all this stuff. It'd be kind of fun. And I couldn't find any information about where to go. I really couldn't. So I thought a smart thing to do would be to stop by a fire station, because the fire guys really, they know a lot about the area. So we stopped at, I guess there still is a fire station in the northernmost part of Murrells Inlet. Is that still there?
Yeah.
Okay, so Joe was in the car, and I walked inside, and I yelled, I said, hello, is anybody there? Nothing happened. So I walked around, and I walked to an office, and there was kind of a strange-looking fellow sitting there. I said, you the boss? He said, yep, I am now. And I remember that. He said, yep, I am now. I said, well, we're looking for Alice Flagg, the famous ghost, and where her marker is and everything, and I figured someone here at the fire station would know exactly where to go. He said, oh, yeah, she's at All Saints Church. That's down there in Pawleys Island. Mm-hmm. But don't forget, there's a very famous bar and entertainment location here in Murrells Inlet called Alice Flagg's. I said, really? He said, yeah, it's really popular, great food. You need to be sure to go to it. I said, okay, great, well, thanks. And then I had one other question, because this was before I had a GPS. I needed to find out where All Saints Church was. So I got out to the car. I said, Joe, I'm ready, except I got to go back in and ask the guy how to get to All Saints Church. So I immediately walked out, walked to the car, which was parked right next to the fire station, turned right back around, and walked in. I said, hey, I got one more question. And there was nobody there. I looked through the entire fire station. I knocked on the restroom doors, opened them. There was nobody there. Now, I also walked out the back. There was nobody there. And I realized there was no car there. There was no car there. And it was a very strange incident. So anyway, we went to All Saints Church, and we took our pictures, and it was a lot of fun. So the next thing I said was, well, let's go to Alice Flagg's and eat. He said, sure. So I started asking, where's Alice Flagg's? Nobody knew. I had a guy that didn't look right tell me to go to a location, and it wasn't there. I thought that was very strange. It was a rather ghostly thing that happened. Now, I took some buddies of mine. We went to the Hermitage. Now, that is the house in which Alice supposedly grew up, and we think is probably right. And I'm not going to say where it is, but it had been moved. And we went there, and we took a video camera, and we sat out, and we watched it for a couple of hours.
A couple hours just looking at a house.
Yeah, taking video.
Okay.
It was kind of boring, but it was nice. We all were in the spirit of, we're on a ghost hunt.
Yeah.
So we got back to Dave's house, and we put the video on. And not a minute after it started, in the upper left room, we saw a definite flash of light, and then we saw a longer light, definitely longer. We rewound it a couple of times. And so it was a short burst and a longer burst of light.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody know what that is?
Don't know what it is, but I've seen the flash of light.
Well, dot dash is Morse code for the letter A.
Okay.
And when I figured that out, I said, "Oh my God, Alice is there," and she was saying hello to us. So that's what I
She
had.
must be a Canadian. Hey.
Good grief.
Right. Thanks, Deke.
That's all right.
And I'll tell one more story. This was the night before I was out playing hooky. This was the night before I was supposed to drive up to North Carolina State and defend my dissertation. And I'm in a graveyard with the head of the Kentucky ghost hunters. So I'm in there, well, showing him Alice, showing him all kinds of stuff in there. And then I said, all right, I got to go because I'm going to have to get some sleep or my brain's going to be scrambled at 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon in Raleigh. So went back, and of course, he was up a long time that night in my office, in my house, messing around with all this equipment and everything, and I was trying to get some sleep, and all of a sudden he started knocking on my door. I said, what is it? He said, you got to come here quick. I said, okay. So I went outside, went into the office. He said, let me show you what I found. You didn't know this, but I recorded everything that happened in that graveyard. There was a recorder in my pocket. I said, really? He said, and I have listened to it, and then I slowed it down, and here's what I found. And we heard a little girl's voice definitely say, talk to me. Talk to me. Twice. Now, I don't know about you. That was creepy.
That is.
That is creepy.
That was as creepy as it gets, and I chalk it up. So we're there to visit Alice and visit the tombstone, visit the marker and everything, and so it was very interesting. So there's a lot of little haunted things that have gone on for me. And I have a couple more, but those are the ones that are the most important, especially the fire station and the Alice Flags.
Yeah.
That is very strange. I have heard of instances like that before because the paranormal, I guess you'd say, is more than a hobby. I run things like the Georgia Bigfoot Conference and the South Carolina Lizard Man Festival. It's just fun. And I've met a lot of really nice people in running these events. In fact, this very shortly before this, I ran the Georgia Bigfoot Conference. We had a record crowd of 340 people. In a town of 3,000, we had 340 people.
I think that's huge.
More than 10% of, now they came from all over, but more than 10% of the population of that little town came to see the Georgia Bigfoot Conference and listen to talks about Bigfoot. I just thought it was great. It's really a lot of fun. So, any questions so far?
Well, no, but I've experienced Alice.
How?
Well, when I first got down here in '68, I heard about Alice. And a bunch of us got together. We were down the boulevard hanging loose. 13 of us went out, held hands, went backwards around it 13 times. A girl laid her ring on the concrete, on the actual stone. And after 13 times, we heard nothing. So I thought, wow, this is all of a sudden, I heard a tingling, like an actual piece of metal hitting that. And I mean, I was looking, I was looking around. We didn't have our eyes closed. And as soon as that thing started to tingle, I took off. I'm serious, man. We all took off. We all broke hands and ran. So there might be a little something to that, because I never saw anybody go back and get the ring or nothing. Nobody would go back. And I get the girl, I don't know what happened to her ring. We never went back. Another thing, I played the tour guide in the picture Honeymoon from Hell, which is supposed to be the Hollywood version of Alice's story that they filmed down here. So a lot of that story, I had to learn it. I had to actually learn it. I was like listening to your story there, and a lot of that's in the script, where she hid the ring up underneath so you couldn't see it.
But he saw it
But
one
he
day.
finally found it. Yeah, when he found it, because he hid it from her. She put it up underneath her dress. But yeah, I think, there could be something to it. I believe in that kind of thing.
Sure you do.
Well,
Really?
Yeah.
You believe
Yeah.
in ghosts, Marshall?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
I do.
I do. I believe there's got to be more than this. It's like people believe in the aliens. I believe in anything. Anything can happen, is the way I look at it. We're spirits.
Well, are ghosts real, John?
Well, where there's smoke, there's fire. I believe it's safe to
Well,
say.
there's a good old X-Files answer for you.
Well,
Thank you, smoking man.
Yeah.
let me go. Let me continue. Well, I guess what I can say is, far more than 50% of the people in our nation have seen an anomalous event, which means something that really can't be explained, whether it's a ghost or a UFO or whatever. Now, I mentioned a little earlier that we can only see a very small spectrum of light, and we can only hear a small spectrum of sound. And how many of you, I'll take a poll, how many of you have ever seen a friendly dog stand in a room and bark at an empty space? Raise your hand.
Oh, absolutely.
Sure,
of
Okay,
course. Yeah,
so
yeah,
we're 4 out of 4. Well, now,
Dog
dog.
does it all the time.
I've seen cats do crazy stuff like that.
Okay.
Stand up and
Yeah, look
hair
around.
stands up on end, and they're looking at doors and windows. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Now they're smart enough that they're so smart that they get us to feed them, and they
Exactly.
get us to hug them and all that stuff. They're pretty darn smart. So a dog, I'll take a dog because I have a dog. My dog will stand there and bark at something, and I do get the creeps because I know there must be something there, and it's really kind of crazy. So there's a lot of science that's becoming known about these things. It has to do with our senses and how our body operates and what we can perceive. There's one interesting thing. I was introduced to this about 6 months ago from a sales guy, and it's called the reticular activation system. Mm-hmm. Now, that is something that exists in our brainstem. And here's a perfect example. I was given the assignment to go find businesses with between 5 and 25 employees. So I drove down Highway 9. For those of you, if you're brand new, Highway 9 is the Sea Mountain Highway, and it's on the very northern part of the county, and it ends in Myrtle Beach, and it goes to, well, at least it goes to Charlotte, or at least by Charlotte and everywhere else. So I was trying to look and see what would be good candidate businesses to have 5 to 25 people, and I couldn't find any. I sat there and I drove by. I couldn't recognize any of them. And I thought about it that night. I said, why can't I find it? Whatever. It bothered me. So the next day, I happened to be driving to Loris from North Myrtle Beach, and I recognized 40 such businesses. It just made sense. I was talking to somebody actually on one of my podcasts last night. I said, you got kids, right? He said, yeah, I got 3 of them. I said, all of a sudden, you started noticing things that you had never noticed, like you could just tell by a sound, a whine, or whatever, that a kid might not be doing well in the nursery. He said, yeah, it's really weird. Never had a kid. We'd never had kids, but all of a sudden, one day, I just knew when the kid was not doing well, and I'd rush in there and do what else at night. So the reticular activation system is something that we've got, and I think it explains a lot when we are able to perceive things that we have not been able to perceive before.
Like a premonition.
Well, we could. That's an interesting fact. Mm-hmm. I believe that some people who are good at having premonitions and who are good at kind of reading a situation a little bit better than just a normal person, I believe that their reticular activation system has learned to do that. And now there is some study going on that at the Ryan Research Center up in Durham, where I did when I was getting my doctorate at North Carolina State. I spent 3 years as a research associate at the Ryan Institute of Parapsychology, and it was great, and I learned a lot. And in fact, my surgeon and I are going to write a paper toward the end of this year about this system and how it might affect how we perform in recognizing situations and recognizing the paranormal and everything. So there's a lot. I'd say, and I've always said this, the paranormal of today is the science of 100 years from now. Because like in 1900, if I had looked at you and said, there's going to be a time when we can get a little 3x5 card, it's going to look like a 3x5 card, it's black, it's about a ½ inch thick, and we're going to be able to talk directly to China in real time. Now in 1900, they would have said, well, you're crazy or that's witchcraft. That's right. Okay? Well, we know what it is. It's a cell phone. Mm-hmm. So the paranormal of 100 years ago is likely to become the science of the future. Now, I will get down on the National Science Foundation. They're not interested in that. They're interested in butterfly classifications and other such things that I don't think are as relevant to our lives and our society as figuring out that reticular activation syndrome and seeing how it can help us become better and more talented people. At least that's what I think, and I'm going to get down on them for that. So, and another thing that I think is really interesting is when you talk to folks, some people say, I don't believe in that. No. Well, okay, they're called skeptics, and I don't like skeptics. Did you know that, Deacon?
No, I didn't know that, but I look at like everything is a possibility.
Well, yeah, I know. Well, you're open-minded. Jack, what do you think about skeptics?
He's a skeptic.
On some things I am, yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what.
Because my skepticism is not really even that.
Right.
Some people just say it's negative. I don't like skeptics.
Right.
In 30 years, I have had a lot of talks with Jack, and Jack is extremely open-minded. and the problem with him is he actually remembers every conversation we've ever had.
Yeah. You believe it.
But skeptics kind of fall into 5 categories, and you need to be careful about them. I think they're kind of dangerous because skeptics have 5 tricks that they use to tell you, no, you're wrong.
Okay.
When you know you're right. Okay, first of all, they attack the man. They attack the person who is saying something is so. Okay. Here's an example. Now, I've got a book coming out called The Lizard Man Companion. It's about the lizard man sightings in Bishopville in 1987 to 1989. And there have been a lot of skeptics that have tried to attack those sightings. The first sighting that was really recorded was by Christopher Davis, and it was in 1988. It was in, I think, July 27th. And it was a landmark thing. It was in the newspaper. It was a police report and everything. So what happens is I heard some skeptics from Canada, and the first thing they said was, it was 2 o'clock in the evening. He'd been off work for 2 hours. He was probably drunk or high or been with his girl.
Yeah.
Well, a little bit of going to the McDonald's there, I asked him, I said, back in the day, y'all used to be I've heard y'all were the busiest McDonald's on Interstate 20. They said, absolutely. There was no other place to eat at night. We were 24 hours a day. I said, do you remember back in the day, did they ever make you work late in the evenings? Gosh, yeah. If it was a mess, because, we'd be on a skeleton crew, we'd have a ton of people, and we'd have to clean up and get everything ready so that when they walked in for breakfast at 5 o'clock in the morning, the place was clean. So there's your answer is why was he out at 2 o'clock in the morning when his shift was over at 12? It was because he was working. I figured that out. All I did was ask a question of a manager that had been there for quite a while. But what they do is they attack the man. They say, oh, he's a bad guy. He was drunk. He was high or whatever. And so they'll also say, well, that's just impossible. That just can't be. Or they'll ignore and they'll misrepresent facts. This is the best misrepresentation of a fact I have ever come up with. Do I have about 3 minutes to finish these, Jack?
Yes.
because this is fun.
3 minutes.
On April the 17th, 2022, I did a podcast which was a celebration of the 125th anniversary of the Aurora, Texas UFO crash. That was the first super well-documented crash, and it was the best thing going until Roswell, okay? And Roswell was even better documented, at least what we still have of it. Thank you, Mr. U.S. government. But, calling names now. Okay, I don't want any men in black at my door now. Y'all can just go away. So anyway, the Wise County Historical Commission claim that whole incident is a fake, that it's a hoax. So a friend of mine named Jim Mars, he's an investigative reporter. He's retired, and he's from Wise County. He decided to find out what the story was. This girl named Robbie, who was 12 years old, lived with her parents. And the day after the crash, somebody came by on horseback, because, you know, that's how people visited each other back in 1897, on horseback. So he comes walking along on his horse, and he says, well, did you hear what happened to Judge Proctor's farm? And Robbie's dad rolled his eyes and said, I can only imagine. Okay? So Robbie is playing with her friend Etta a couple of days later. And she says, my dad says that didn't happen, that it's a hoax. 10-year-old girl, she didn't go out there to the crash site. A lot of people did. So it's recorded in the newspapers and everything. But, so Etta grows up. Etta becomes the town historian of Aurora. And she claims, on no uncertain terms, that it was all a hoax, because Robbie's dad said so. And the official position of the Wise County Historical Society is that it didn't happen. Now, come on. I mean, that's just like misrepresenting facts and all that. So, you know, you got to be careful about these skeptics, because they can be damaging, especially when you have your beliefs that, you know, I really believe in ghosts. I talked to Mama last night. Mama's been gone 20 years. And a lot of people have those experiences. So don't let skeptics tear your experiences down, because me and my science are one day going to prove those skeptics wrong. So officially, I'm going to put a period on this interview, and I'm going to say that's what I got to say. But I hope you enjoyed it. And you got any questions?
Well, we're a little pushed for time on the question side, but you do a podcast, and Scary Cast airs appropriately Saturday nights at midnight.
Saturday nights at midnight on Tiger Radio. We love it. We got great co-hosts. We got Robin the Psychic. We got Dr. Trey Dunaway, a surgeon. We've got a comedian from Hollywood. And we've got a technology nerd from Niagara Falls, Canada.
Wow.
And it's a blast. We have a good time, and it's wonderful. So, tune in. Tiger Radio, midnight on Saturday night. One of my bucket list things, I wanted to be an overnight with a paranormal show on a radio station. WLSC, AM and FM.
There you go.
Laura Smyrtle
I'm
Beach.
glad we could kick something off your bucket list.
Thank you.
That's a good thing. Thanks for joining us, man. You going to come back for another episode?
I'd love to.
All right. Sounds like a plan. You stayed quiet, Marshall, which was odd.
I was, you know what I do? I was checking and looking and bringing up some information
He'll
over here. I
fact
like
check on you.
Yeah,
right.
no, I'm not a skeptic. I believe what the man says, so I just like to look and verify. It's an interesting day. I learned a lot.
Sweet.
I got
Thank
a lot
you,
more
sir.
to look.
All righty. Thank you, Deacon.
Yeah, and I've got more instances that when he comes back we'll talk about.
I never knew that you had an Alice Flagg story there.
Oh,
I
yeah.
didn't either.
You didn't know I was in that flick?
I knew you were in the flick, but
played
I
the
didn't know
tour
that
guide.
you walked around backwards 13 holding hands with a bunch of stoners.
Yeah. That was pretty odd there.
Right.
Well, I don't know,
I'm
but
not surprised.
I don't know, but I think if you walk around backwards 13 times, you're probably going to be dizzy.
And I'm going to hear something.
Well, there's going to be alcohol involved before you start anyway.
Or else somebody had taps on their shoes as they were running. Maybe that was
That could have been it right there. Sure enough. Well, that's it for this edition of Fireside Chat Radio, brought to you by the Jerry Cox Company. We'll see you again, because we never put history on the back burner. Say goodbye, y'all.
Goodbye, y'all.
Bye, y'all.